Welcome back to Module 2. So, this is the first lesson of Module 2. For Module 2, we're going to be looking at programming fundamentals. And for writing programs, you need to know, you need to understand variables and data storage. So, what are variables? Variables are containers for storing data values. That's just what variable is. Well, let me use a different definition. I would say a variable is a name given to a computer memory location that can change during program execution. So the variable can be numbers, it can be just literals, it can be strings or boolean, right? So it is used during the execution of a program. So when the computer is working on a program, is processing data, it uses these variables to store data, and the values inside the variable can change. That is why it is called variable. It can change. While for constants, constants are also just containers for holding data, but now the values of a constant cannot change during program execution. So let's talk about the data storage. So variables reside in computer memory, allowing programs to access and manipulate data dynamically. So like I mentioned, that a variable is just a name given to a computer memory location. So that memory location that has been assigned to this variable is what is we refer to as the data storage. Okay, so that's the data store. That's where this variable has been assigned. That's the allocation that the variable has been assigned. So, but don't worry, you're going to understand this better. So let's talk about data types. So for every variable declaration, there has to be a data type assigned to it. So for this previous slide now, we're talking about numbers, we're seeing strings and booleans here. These are data types. So that's why we're talking about data types here now. So we have, in programming, we have different data types depending on the language. So, but for the general data types, we have the integers. The integers are referred to represents the whole numbers without decimal points, like 1, 2, 3, just numbers, right? You can also have it can be positive or negative. So those are integers, they're just whole numbers without decimal points. While the floating numbers are numbers, but with decimal points. Sorry. Example pi, example 3.14 minus 0.5, just numbers with decimal points like this are called floating point numbers. While strings are just textual data enclosed in quotation mark. Example, hello world. So when you're declaring a string, you always put them in a quotation mark. So to tell the computer that this is a string. So the Boolean values are representing true or false. So it can only have true or false. Those are called Booleans. So these are different data types. There are some other programming languages have more data types, more than this, longer data types, but you get to understand them when you start working with them. So for variable declaration, for you to declare a variable during program execution, there are conventions and best practices for variable naming, right? So to name a variable, you should give the variable a meaningful name. I'm describing how you name a variable. So choose a descriptive name that conveys the purpose of the variable. Number one. So it could be camel case or snake case, following depending on the language. Just depending on the language you're using, it could be camel case, it could be the snake case. While the third one, avoid reserved words. So there are words in the computer that means special things to the computer, right? Or to a particular language. So you cannot use those words when you're declaring a variable. So if you're declaring a variable with those names that are already reserved for the computer, it's going to throw an error because it's a reserved word and you're not supposed to use that word. words like var, var, let, words like that. So when you're naming a variable like that, it's going to throw an error. So this is example of variable declaration. Var, this is for JavaScript. Var, my variable now is the name of the variable, right? Equal to hello world. So it's going to console.log my variable, that's you're trying to print the variable that you just declared. Console.log is going to output hello world, because that's the word inside the variable. So my variable now is the name of the variable. So wherever you're going, wherever you want to refer to the value in the variable, you just call my variable, and it's going to print out hello world for you, because hello world is the value. My variable is the name of the variable, while var is the reserved word that is used to declare a variable. So after downloading your Visual Studio Code or your IDE, any text editor you have decided to use, but I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. So what you do is just create a folder. I have already created a folder on my desktop, so I'm just going to be using this is just a new folder I created. So I'm going to be using. So I'm just going to open my Visual Studio Code. Right now, just make it full screen. Now go to the side menu and open that folder you just created. You can create a folder from Visual Studio Code, but I did it that way so you're not confused. So I'm opening this folder now. This is the project one. That's the folder that I just showed you on my desktop. So, and this is a file. To create a file in Visual Studio Code, you just click on this icon. This is for creating a file, and this is for creating a folder. So just tap on it, give this file a name. Let's just call it file. Oh, I prefer small letters. File.js, which means JavaScript. Enter. Voila, we have created a JavaScript file. These variables is also a JavaScript file. This one too. I just created it so that you see both of them are empty. So let's just get right into creating a variable. What is a variable? What is a variable? Like I mentioned, a variable is a container that holds values. It's a container that holds values during program execution. So when the computer is executing executing code or instructions, the values in the variable can change. So it's just a name. Let me show you what I mean. So we can say var. Var is the old way of declaring a variable in JavaScript. Let's say var my variable, semicolon. So now I have created my variable. So this is how you create a variable, just using var, any name. A variable can be called anything. It could be first name, var, first name. Oh, let me give it here. Can we please? It could be anything. Var, first name, var, last name. It's just a variable is a name. It's just a name. So this name is the container now. So you can decide to say, so my variable, what value am I putting inside my variable? Let me give it an integer, let's say 10. So whenever my variable is called now, the computer is going to show what is inside my variable, that is 10. So whenever you call my variable, 10 is going to be displayed. While first name, let's say first name is equal to John, but this is a string now, John. So wherever I call first name, the computer is going to give me John. So let's print this out. To print, we use console.log, that is for JavaScript. Console.log, then you put the name of the variable. You're just trying to tell this IDE, please print out the value inside my variable and print out the value of first name. So let me run this code now. You can see the run button. There's a play button just by the top right corner here. So when I click on it, it runs the code. Just look down here and you can see the output. 10. Console.log, my variable is 10. Console.log first name is John. So this is how you declare your variable in JavaScript. But var is an old way of declaring your variable. Let me declare another variable using let. Let my val, this time around, val, semicolon, let my number. So I just created another variable. Let me assign values to this variable that I just created. So let's say my val now is going to be a string. Remember, notice that I'm using the semicolon after each statement. So my val, who's my val? Is going to be my val. Let's say Jerome. Okay. My number is what? Let's say, oh, it's a number, not a string. Number 0809. So that's my number. So let's print it too. Let's say console.log my val semicolon console.log my number semicolon. So let's run our code again. Run. Let's push this up. So we can see, okay, it's running the entire program now. The first one, my variable is 10. First name is John. My val is Jerome. While my number, so I think there's an error. Console. Oh, there's an error. Look at now. You see, we're going to talk about debugging. So if you look at my console now, my console is telling me that there's an error in this line. Look at console.log. I mean, it's showing me that I mistakenly typed 2n instead of 1. So that's why there's an error. So now I have fixed this error. Now let's rerun this program and see. Now you see the whole 20 lines of code has disappeared. So now you can see 809 as my number down here. So this is for variable declaration. And yeah, I talked about constants. So how do we declare a constant? What is a constant, by the way? I explained it before, but let me go over it again. A constant is like the opposite of a variable. A constant now cannot change. A variable can change during program execution. I can decide to change. Now this is my val. I can decide to change the value inside my val and give it another value. My val now is going to be equal to, who's going to be my val? Let's say Kenneth. Kenneth is going to be my val, right? So let me run this program again. Now you see my val is no longer Jerome. My val is now Kenneth. So you see the value of my val can change. The value of a variable can change during program execution, but a constant cannot change. That's why it's called a constant. It is constant, and constant is defined with the keyword const, which stands for constant. So when you write const, JavaScript understands that this is a constant. So it means the value of this constant cannot change. So const, let's say last name, semicolon. I think there's too much space here. Const, last name equal to Austin. Semicolon. So now this constant, the value of this constant cannot change throughout the program execution. It's going to remain Austin. It's going to remain Austin. It's not going to change. Let me try. Let me print the last name out. Console.log, and we have last name, right? Yeah. So let me try changing. Let's run the code first before I try changing it. Let's run this code. Okay. Yep. Now you see this is Austin. Let me try changing Austin and print it out again. Const last name equal to baby. See, it's already throwing an error. It's trying to tell me that no, look at it's underlining the two of them. It's trying to say that you cannot redeclare blocks. So one thing I forgot to mention is you cannot redeclare a variable. I think what I did before was redeclaring a variable or a constant. Whether variable or a constant, you can redeclare them. Let's say let my val equal to mine. You see that it is underlining them because this variable has already been declared. Cannot redeclare the block scoped variable, this. And the same thing goes for a constant. You cannot redeclare a constant. Last name equal, say, can. It cannot happen. Whether for constant or for variable, it cannot happen. So let's remove that. But for constant, you cannot reassign value to an already declared constant. So we say constant last name is Austin. So we're not trying to redeclare it anymore. We're trying to assign another value to last name. So that's why it's not throwing any error for now. That's for now. But for my val, that we already reassigned another name to my val. My val used to be Jerome, now it's Kenneth. But variable does not have any problem with that because it can change during program execution. But a constant cannot change during program execution. So it is going to complain about this particular one because it is a constant. Now let us print it out. Let's try to run this code and see what it's going to say. Now you see the error, console log last name, reference error, last name is not defined. So this is the error. You cannot reassign to a constant. You cannot reassign a value. So that's why it is constant, but it can happen for a variable because it can change during program execution, but a constant cannot change during program execution. So let me comment this out, right? By putting this double stroke. So this comment is telling the computer to ignore this file. Just ignore this file. This is not executable. Just leave it out. So now let me run this program again. Now you see that everything is working just the way they should. So a variable can change during program execution, but a constant cannot change. It is constant. That is the way it's going to remain throughout that project, throughout that program. So I think this better explains everything. So using the IDE helps you to debug, helps you to find errors, helps you to know what you're doing wrong, how to correct, so that you know how to correct it. You correct it earlier on before it causes you further problems in the future. So that's why we use an IDE like this to. So it's going to throw an error. It's going to throw an error. So it's called a syntax error because identifier last name has already been declared, so you cannot You can't. No, no, no. You can't. You can't do this. You can't do this. That's what he's screaming. He's screaming. No, you can't do this. You can't do this. So, well, yeah. I think I hope I've been able to make you understand how to declare variables, and so you can do it the right way. And I've been declaring variables like this so that I don't confuse you, right? I've declared it before assigning values to it, but this time around, I declared it and I assigned value immediately to it. So instead of writing two lines of code like this, you can decide to say my val is equal to this instead of writing like this. So let me write a different variable. Let me create a different variable now and just assign immediately. Let what am I going to call it? Let car equal to Corolla. Oh, that's how I spell it. Let's car equal to. So I just declared this variable and assigned a value to it immediately. So I didn't put a semicolon and then start assigning a so variable again. So I'm showing you that it can be done either ways. You can decide to do it this way or just save space and time and just do it. Go straight to do it that way. So let's just console this one again before we conclude. Okay. So let's print our car console. Let's run our program. So yeah, this is it. Corolla is down here. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you've been able to learn something. Please keep practicing this. Practice this on your own. Keep practicing and you get better, okay? Thank you. See you in the next lesson. Conclusion. So this lesson has covered the basics of variable and data types in programming, essential for storing and manipulating information in code. Importance of variable. Understanding variables and data type lays the foundation of writing efficient and readable code. So what you're going to do is to practice declaring variable, practice using a variable, use different scenarios. You can look that up, make your research, look for how to declare variable, the proper practices in declaring a variable, and you will see everything written out there. So if you have any question, please, I always say, don't forget to reach out. Reach out, ask your question in our community, and you're going to get clarification. If there's anything you want to know, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next lesson.